a little bit their modus operandi in a way that they open up to new possibilities. So something different may emerge. And how do you create those spaces where co-creativity can flourish? Does that make sense?
Most definitely. And I'm curious if anybody else in the crowd here, I mean, do you acknowledge the how we go through dynamic consensus structures inside of our own like family units? Like there's probably at times as a mother, father, that you're a dictator, and then there's other times in the same day that you operate by democracy and everybody has a vote on if we go get ice cream or not. I'm just curious if we're all aware of the level of dynamic consensus, dynamic governance that we do on a daily basis that are not built into our institutional structures, let alone our spiritual institutional structures. So, anybody else cared to share? Maybe Catherine, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah. I've worked for a long time with the art of hosting, and this is one of the practices that we really work at doing, and we call it emergence, and that it's the only way you can possibly create a new consensus and new ideas and things is to have all those voices put into the mix. And it's that mix of things, because when we're speaking, we kind of come from our own experiences, our own ideas, but it's very limiting. But it's when everyone can throw into the mix and stuff, gives birth to a new opportunity. And then it has to be tweaked and refined. But it's really the only, to me, we pretty much feel like the only way you can create that newness and that pureness is in that format. It's strictly emergence that comes up from that.
Mm. Catherine,
No, go around.
Oh, if I may, just two brief comments, because I really appreciate what Catherine just said, and I think it reminds me of. I made a brief. My professional work is in the nonprofit philanthropy space, and this is huge there. You know, it's like we talk about designing institutions to elevate historically marginalized communities, but so often, and philanthropy is guilty of this, right? Like those voices aren't included. So you're developing an alternative, but you're not talking to the people who are directly impacted by your alternative in its creation, right? So it's like, how do you grapple with that tension? And I think it really resonates with me because SpiritDAO, at least for the community so far, is very much a place with the intention to give more than you necessarily extract yourself, right? It's working towards this shared vision, this huge 8 Dignities vision, a massive vision that we want to kind of accomplish, but it kind of drives us to this kind of collective sense-making process through that. So that really resonated, and the only other comment I'll make is, Steph, I love your family example, right? I can't help but feel that oftentimes my 4-year-old is the dictator of the house, and it's not the parents. So
I want to add one more thing to this, is that one of the things that we have to be very conscious and mindful of, I think typically dynamics, especially if it's a group of people that know each other, or like you said, family, or in a office setting or something, you always have the people that always have the ideas and always overpower everyone and always want to be talking and have the ideas. It's the people that don't speak, but through this process, there's a need for what we call deep democracy. Every voice needs to be heard, because sometimes it's the quiet ones that's just been bullied or overpowered that are afraid to speak that actually have some amazing responses and answers. And we have to make sure that we throw that into the mix collectively.
It's what Rick said, guides on the side need to get on stage, or stages off the stage. I like how that was. Catherine, do you participate in an organization where you feel like it's operating well? And then do you see any relation to bringing spirituality inside of that organization? And if so, like how would you even operate across within that space where people may have different approaches to spirituality and it just gets in the way of maybe the organization operating well? I'm just curious if you've seen that exist in your life.
It takes a while to work towards that. You have to set intentions. You kind of have to do a little bit, and we've discussed this in other of these talks that we've had, our invitations that we've had so far, is that there's a bit of unlearning and relearning that has to take place, but setting clear intentions, because pretty much I think that when you've got an issue like this, that you're, everyone is kind of on the common thread that there's an issue, that's a problem, things are not working properly. And so I call it designing an alliance. I'm very clear about designing that alliance, about what are we trying to accomplish. It's a roadmap so that everyone kind of has, you set up the design of how we're going to come together. And that itself allows the kind of spirituality that needs to happen, I think, to coming together. And if anybody, if it ever gets off track, I always collect it on a sheet so that people can see it. And anytime we're having a discussion, if people start overpowering each other or arguing or it gets off track, I always point back, are we in alignment with the design and our agreement that we had? And everybody will generally very quickly get back on track, because they'll say, no, everybody's being disrespectful, or I don't have voice anymore. So it has to be designed properly with that intention.
Sure. For sure.
I love that point, Catherine. I think for me, it hits on two threads I'd like to pull on, and I'll end with an open-ended question. But agree strongly. I think, Rick, whether we call them virtues or values, right? Ultimately, this is like what I feel when we think about like building spiritual renaissance, like building spiritual community. I think the overarching value structure to kind of have a shared vision of the good of how we do it is very critical. And I think this is, from my experience, one of the challenges that many people who like enjoy like the co-living space, which is, speaking candidly, is not my personal experience. I have a partner and a child, but it's, I've heard a lot of like, without like an underlying value structure, to Catherine's point, to kind of retreat to and say, hey, are we living these values? There's tension here. How does this align with our values? Without that like foundation, it becomes very difficult to build intentional communities, because like, for example, co-living is not enough. Like it's not enough. It's cool. It's a cool idea, but then in the face of strife, it becomes challenging. And I also think, and I would love, and Rick, I'll hand up to you next, but I would love anyone's opinion. One thing I've seen a lot in this space is, and I've tried to do differently with SpiritDAO, and I think we've successfully done, is there is an emergent property, right? There's many great ideas, many brilliant people, but I think there is an element of almost what I would label as Prometheanism, right? Prometheus stole fire from the gods. And the challenge is that it's not that people don't want to use the fire. It's that many people want to be Prometheus. They want to have their name attached to the foundational solution, right? Which is why, if you weren't here for when I shared it, the book that I originally authored, right? I say original because SpiritDAO collectively has changed the book, but SpiritDAO legally owns it. I haven't made one penny from the book. All the money the book has ever made has gone to SpiritDAO. They own the trademarks, right? They own everything. So I think it was, when we're talking about doing this in a way that is meaningful and genuine, there's an aspect of, as we kind of talked about earlier, that sense of shared bigness, of doing something greater than ourselves, that's so critical. Because I think many of us are, I shouldn't say many of us, but there are observations I've had in the space where I feel like they're, people's hearts are in the right place, but they can't quite free themselves from their inheritance of like this self-assertion as the primary means of like success, right? Like, I got to be the guy to do the thing. And let's be candid, it's primarily a white male thing, right? Probably my demographic, 40s, like early 40s. It's probably, very, very common in that space. But I think it's something that I am very proud of what we've built so far is like, although this initially stemmed from like a chapter in a book I wrote going on 3 years ago, I don't have any more power than Steph. I have we are equals on this kind of shared mission. And that really excites me because I feel like it's so critical to kind of do it the right way, as opposed to like doing it the right way, but like wrapping it in some sort of extractive mechanism and charging, whatever for entry in a course, etc. But let me pause. Rick, please, hop up.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo something you just said and what Stefan shared with his own personal story about decision-making within his family. I can't say I claim the term, or I can't remember where it came from, but the notion of coarchy, which is really agile, dynamic power sharing, which is, and what you described is an example of that. And I want to commend you even further because, before I go on to that, I do want to, we don't have time to deal with this, but there's incredible differences between virtues and values. And we've all been schooled in values, and it's, from my point of view, is highly problematic, which we don't have time to do a deep dive into now, but that's for another session. But I want to come back to what you were describing and what you were saying your spiritual Tao is about and your lack of ownership of the book, which is another area which is highly problematic, is personal, professional, and corporate brands. And we need to move to causes and missions that are independent of brands. So we're all schooled in the notion of brands, but our branding language and our value language are highly problematic for developing a spiritual renaissance. This requires a much longer conversation. We have time for now, but I just wanted to put that one on the table.
Appreciate that. And Cheryl, I see your comment. I appreciate that. I have some initial thoughts, but I'd love if you want to. Do you want to expand on it? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I hear you what you're saying about the lack of ROI being a privilege. So, but please. Can't hear you, Cheryl. You may have to open your audio. Yeah, they say that the greatest compliment you can give a philosopher is take your time. So,
Ron, I think she's muted.
I think she might just be struggling. Cheryl, we're gonna. I'll move on from the my main questions. And maybe if chat works, Cheryl, don't stress if like your video is not working or the platform's not working for you.
Well, hold on, Cheryl. I think if you start talking now, you're unmuted. At least it shows this way. So try talking. Okay. No, we're not hearing you.
Sorry, Cheryl. And
Yeah,
maybe you're
sorry.
upper left by the toolbar, like there's like a little menu where you have to give it permission sometime.
Or maybe click on her mic and then re-click it again to maybe, it's like a computer. Sometimes you have to turn it off and on. They get stuck.
Turn mic off. Turn mic. I hear her volume all the way up. Well, noted. I will, Cheryl, while you're trying to figure that out, you're welcome to use the chat. I'm sorry it's not working. I agree with your point, and it wasn't intended to be to impress anyone with the idea that like gave it all away. And speaking candidly with everyone here, right? I would be absolutely clear. I am not necessarily in a position of personal privilege. I've been unemployed for 7 months outside of my personal efforts, so it's not like it's not like I couldn't have used the capital that we donated away. But I share it because I think the problem is it's like this kind of tension, right? So Cheryl's point is absolutely correct, right? Like how can we expect marginalized change makers to contribute if we're saying you have to give everything away for free? That's not realistic, right? Their time is valuable. Everyone's time is valuable. At the same time, I think one of the struggles is at the same time. Oh, Cheryl, is that you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh, Cheryl, is that you?
Yeah, so I had to log on from another device. And it's so like it's funny. I'm giving bunny ears. It's funny that this is happening while I'm talking about privilege, because I really feel like where I was coming from when I was saying that was, I mean, from my own personal experience, which I don't need to really get into here, but to also represent voices that, I mean, like even just now, just to be able to speak up, I have to go through all of this technological insanity because my computer like is acting slow, and like even the chat, like you were talking about, oh, I could just talk in the chat, and actually that anytime I would type in the chat, I was afraid my computer was going to crash. There's just something about this tech that is really demanding on my computer resources. But you just to speak on to speak on and now I'm hearing myself. Oh boy, yeah.
Two screens.
Hold on, I'm gonna close my computer. Close my computer. And let's see if okay. Wow, this is so distracting to my brain.
You're good now. We can hear you.
But I was my point was that you know, for folks to use their creativity in the world and to expect or need or request a return on that investment in their own name, whether by credit or by money, you know, it's, and I there's my own personal triggers are definitely speaking here, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that it's something that's worth saying. It is an incredible privilege to be able to write a book and then to not need any of that of the return on that investment. And so how this is applicable to what we're talking about here on a grander scale, I think it speaks to how would an organization like this create opportunity for participants that need livelihood support? And I'll just leave that question the way that I asked it. Thank you.
Appreciate that question, Cheryl. So I can just share with you what we've done so far. So granted, we are like fledgling, but I do believe strongly that people should be paid for their efforts, right? So I want to be clear that what we're advertising at SpiritDAO is not this volunteer pyramid where you just come and work indefinitely. To date, we have paid members for their efforts, whether it be social media management, of doing things. Some members contribute a lot of volunteer time if they can. But what we're looking to do actually with that is through our intercommunity token is form a way of earning in addition to like fiat capital, right? So if you did a project, you might earn X dollars, but also Y self tokens. And the idea is that the self tokens form an intercommunity medium of exchange. So let's kind of like dive that deeper. You could imagine that if we were stewarding land, as is the plan, and the land eventually has outputs, well, we catalog those outputs on chain. And because activity is on chain, we can say, oh, Ron, you spent a Saturday at the land, you were helping plant, you're entitled to X% of the outcomes of the produce, and whether that becomes actual produce, whether it becomes the capital earned from selling the produce, there's means within the ecosystem, especially because everything's on chain, really, I think grounded in the fact that everything's on chain, where you can really support efforts at the macro and micro scale and compensate people for those accordingly. Now, this is all experimental, right? I want to be clear, like Steph and I don't have it figured out. We're still kind of going through the process. That's just how it's going to be for some time. No DAO, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Web3 space, no DAO has it figured out yet. Most of the old like legacy DAOs are dead. The few that are alive are conglomerates, essentially. They're very big, and there's a lot of like experimental DAOs like what we're doing. So that is something that I think is very important to us. but we're right now, it's just kind of like, if we need you to post 3 months worth of Twitter posts, we'll pay you for it, right? And then we do a bounty system. And what the bounty system is you put a certain amount of capital in the escrow, $500. I assign a reviewer. So Steph is going to do the post. JP is going to review it. JP says, yes, the posts have been scheduled. And then the escrow releases the funds to Steph automatically. So that's the infrastructure we have for current, transactions. And we're in the process of building an inter-community market for our own token that is time bound. So that's basically it. But we are 501c3. We're a nonprofit. There's no like venture backing. So, as is the struggle with all of these movements, capital is a problem. And I think, it's a challenge. I don't know. I don't have a better answer than what we are at the moment. If you have any insights, I'd love to hear them. But for now, it's kind of experimental. And our hope is that as members join and expand our community, that more perspectives will help us kind of craft a more compelling narrative and protocol.
Ron, I was just thinking about what are the other organizations that are potential. How can you be part of a network of ecosystem of other kindred spirit organization like the Center on Human Technology and other ones? Because to me, that's where the network power comes in. I don't know whether you've evolved to a point where you can even think of that or not. But what are the strategic alliances that might allow co-elevation between people working in kindred spirit initiatives?
That's a tough question, Rick. There's a lot of people working on similar problems in different directions. And I can only share my personal experience because I do a lot of outreach, and coming from the philanthropic nonprofit sector, I know how important those networks are. And I think part of the challenge is that it's there's not a lot of reciprocity to that type of like deep network that is needed just yet. I feel like it's still very much a party of like the haves and the have-nots. So there's certain people who are at the top of the alternative space, and they kind of keep in their networks, and it's very difficult to kind of break in. Funders, typically really, a lot of foundations, grant giving foundations prioritize historical relationships. So in terms of the network, I mean, there are other networks. There's the Regen Network, which is very popular. And we are connected. We have members of them in our space, but I think the challenge is because everyone's kind of like working on their own initiatives, and many of these organizations are very much like SpiritDAO, which is they're fledgling and they have low capital, right? Like, so it's very tough to like diminish manpower. And I can only speak for myself. There's also like the lack of moments to dedicate, right? At the end of the day, it's like I juggle between, productive activities to pay for the family, spending time with my family, spending time at SpiritDAO. And it's like, ultimately you kind of have to choose a direction. And I think for me, I've kind of dug deep in the SpiritDAO direction. I think we're really onto something special. Steph is better. He's in his hands raised, so I'll bring up in a moment. Steph is a great networker, and he's done phenomenal, like exposing SpiritDAO to other people. But yeah, I think one of the challenges, and I'll pause on this, is with like overextending ourselves in the networking game is you end up doing nothing, right? I mean, ultimately what we would ideally be is we'd have a member of our DAO who's primarily like what we'd call a steward, right? And they're going out to other organizations and they're getting involved in those organizations, and they're finding cross collaborative opportunities. Right now it's tough. Just between the current work that's going on. But Steph, what are your thoughts? And Catherine, after Steph, please hop up.
Very brief. I would like to hear what Catherine has to say. I was going to respond to Rick because, Rick, you're posting a lot of good content in the chat, and what I foresee is it's just really difficult to track all of the various things that are happening. And if we could track it, it might make the pathway clearer if we're all emerging from this shared foundation, and this community wants to go this way, and this community this way, and this one, just because there's small differences, but we all share some core value. Or sorry, I won't say that because I'm not sure I've really pieced together the value virtue thing that you said, but it's on my list to do's. But what I feel like is at least happening in my head now with SpiritDAO is that I'm trying to put on a platform a range of ways of thinking that stem from a kind of a foundation that we do agree on. And then I at least get to track why one might choose that this is what I agree with or disagree with, and see where the fork occurs. And that's part of the reason why doing this on chain is useful. It's because if you're building a core protocol that says we're going to do pluralism from the get-go and everyone agrees on that, and then when we decide on how to govern like a food and water initiative and you wanted to do democracy there, and we think that actually we're more effective for the next stage here as a plutocracy. I just would like to see how those things start to branch out. And what you call meta governance, I call this, and what I call meta modern spirituality, you call that. We're, I'm saying a little too much, but this is what SpiritDAO is like giving me the chance to do, is explore a range of spiritual alternatives and see them nearby as neighbors. Sorry, I ranted a little bit, but Catherine, let me kick it to you.
Okay. So I don't know if all you guys are on LinkedIn or not, but I have gotten so much resource and realized that there are so many of the same things that are going on now. And this is where I have found it through connecting with LinkedIn and people doing things at scale and different things. And I think that the world has been in the past, and I think we need to do a smarter job about stop having so many groups doing the same thing and recreating the wheel in so many different areas. And let's come together and do like we've done with this, where we have open space technology type platforms where people come together. And it's, again, that creates the emergence of new ideas and exploration, shared best practices, shared information. And it certainly takes some shortcuts, because I think that we're all in a little bit more urgency than we've been in the past about trying to create some shifts in this world and some systems that are working, but finding other people who are doing it because they're out there. But I have found, people are starting to move off the basic, social media platforms and stuff. But LinkedIn has been powerful for me over the last year, really finding some amazing stuff going on. You put it out there, it'll find you.
I appreciate that, Catherine. We are not, SpiritDAO is not yet on LinkedIn. We were waiting to get our 501c3, but maybe I've been lazy with that. So maybe we need to get on the ball. I'm on there and I post all my stuff, obviously, but appreciate that insight.
I mean, I literally, I can post very little something, but because now my network is so like-minded and people doing things, I can get over, 200 and something hits a week of people really looking and being interested in what I'm having to say and asking me questions and stuff. So it has become an important place.
Appreciate that. Guys, we are coming to time, and I want to respect everyone's time. We have just had such a great conversation. Steph and I would like to personally invite any and all of you to join us. Whether it be, I'll post the links one more time, whether it be in our Telegram, which is our most active chat, in our weekly meetings. We meet twice a week, Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard and Fridays at 4 p.m. Wednesday being our contemplative practice, which is typically a more philosophical orientation. So, for example, Rick, if you were free, you should come educate us on values and virtues. We would love to hear it and dive deep into it. And you will have a group to hear your vision. That would be today at 4. Our town hall is more of like a business conversation where we're kind of everyone brings like what they've been working on, and we kind of catalog updates and things like that. I'm going to share, thank you, Steph. I'm going to share one more time our wall of links. So this is our Telegram, our all of the documents if you need them, the book if it's of interest, which you could download for free. Discord, which we have but is not super active. There's a lot of people in there, but it's not very active. And yeah, the whereby link, that's one thing. The reason we use this chat is that the link is always the same. It's always whereby at SpiritDAO. It never changes. So just the times is what's important. So you guys are always welcome to join us if, for whatever reason, so I know we have an international crew. If the times don't work out for you, just let us know. We're small enough to make flexible space, and we want, if it resonates with what we're working on and what you're doing, or even if you just want to share more about what you're doing, Catherine, to your point about kind of coalescing these shared visions, we'd be happy to hear about it. We just love spending time with like-minded people. We knew this conference was going to be a great space for an intimate conversation with people who share our vision of the good. And listen to this thing, man. And so just deeply appreciate you. If anyone has any closing comments, feel free to chime in. I'm just so grateful having the chance to all connect with you. And I do hope, I'll also just throw my email in the chat if that's good for anyone, if that's what you guys prefer. But I just want to make myself totally available in whatever format is good for you. Meet you where you are, because it's kind of where we're at. And again, if this is of interest, please do let us know, because we're very committed and we have a committed group who are working on it. And we're looking really to expand that and continue to do it. And obviously, as we expand, we can specialize to a greater degree.
Are you in the U.S.?
Yes, I am presently based in Florida. Steph, I believe, is in upstate New York right now. Originally, though, from the New York, New Jersey area. Yes.
I'm from Atlanta originally, but I left 15 years ago, and I'm currently living in Berlin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've been here almost a year. I was in India for 10 years before that.
Oh, Catherine, you got to come hang out after the fact. We got to hear about your story, But again,
So Ron, I just want to, it's great getting acquainted with new people who are sort of, I would regard as kindred spirits. So I want to thank you for that. This morning, I actually, I write songs using Suno. And if you're interested, I didn't put the full title. It's called Sing the Hypocrite Song. It's about the GOP convention. It's tongue in cheek. It's a piss take. And I would appreciate if you save the link and listen to the song. Enjoy, because we live in a political context which makes all of this good stuff so difficult to move the needle. So enjoy the song if you have time. I put the link there.
Got it, Rick. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
It was my
Thanks,
pleasure,
everyone.
everyone. And just so you guys know, I will, final thoughts. I did record piecemeal. I didn't do a great job hitting the record button. It's one of my greatest regrets. But I think we had a great conversation. I do have components of it. So I'll chop it up, throw it on our YouTube channel, but I'll also post it on I don't know if everyone formally signed up for the event itself on the platform. If you did, I'll share the link there. If you did not, it'll be on our YouTube channel, so don't stress. But again, I hope to continue the conversation. I hope to see you guys around, and thank you so much for just tuning in. And it was a real pleasure. I hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you. You too.